Coleman home usually glowed with the warmth of everyday life, laughter in the hallway, toys scattered across the floor, the faint smell of Lisa's cinnamon candles drifting through every room. But on this late autumn evening, the air inside felt thick, heavy, and unnaturally still. So still that even the ticking clock on the kitchen wall seemed louder than usual. 6-year-old Emily Coleman, a bright, imaginative girl with golden hair and a habit of humming when she colored, had been sitting quietly on the living room rug. Her crayons were organized in a neat rainbow arc. Her favorite purple sweater draped around her shoulders. Mark, her father, could still picture her small body sprawled across her coloring book just minutes before, but now she was gone, completely gone. Emily, Lisa's voice cracked as she stood frozen in the middle of the living room, clutching one of her daughter's crayons so tightly the paper wrapping began to peel. Emily, sweetheart, answer mommy. Silence. The kind of silence that makes the heart stumble. Lisa moved first, panic slicing through her voice as she sprinted down the hallway, checking Emily's bedroom, the bathroom, and every tiny crevice a child might crawl into. Mark pushed open every cabinet, every closet door, even under the kitchen sink, calling his daughter's name louder each time until it echoed off the walls. Nothing, no giggles, no footsteps, no sound of her dragging her blanket along the floor like she always did. Just the terrifying emptiness of a house to quiet. I swear she was right here, Mark kept saying, running a hand through his hair, his voice trembling. She was right here. Lisa couldn't stop shaking. The door, the windows, everything was closed. She couldn't have gone outside. She wouldn't. She never does. Mark rushed to check the doors anyway. Front, back, sliding every one of them locked from the inside. What is happening? Lisa whispered, hands pressed to her mouth, eyes wide with a fear she couldn't even swallow. Where's my baby? Mark grabbed his phone and dialed 911. Within minutes, the quiet country road leading to their home, filled with flashing blue lights, gravel crunching under patrol wheels as deputies fanned out across the property. Voices echoed across the yard, orders, signals, radio upgrades. The sun hung low in the sky, washing the landscape in gold and shadow. This was the moment the family's world tilted. Deputies formed a perimeter. Flashlights swept across the ground. Officers shouted Emily's name into the darkening woods. One deputy approached with a calm, steady tone. Mr. and Mrs. Coleman, we've called in the canine unit. He'll pick up her scent. And then came K9 Officer Ranger, a seasoned bloodhound, muscular but gentle-eyed, with long ears brushing the grass as he walked. Ranger had found missing hikers, lost seniors, runaway teenagers, but something about tonight made him restless. He sniffed the air before he even reached the porch, as if the tension in the atmosphere was pulling him toward the house. Lisa handed him Emily's purple sweater, small, soft, still smelling faintly of her vanilla shampoo. Ranger inhaled deeply, paused, inhaled again. Everyone expected him to pull toward the woods or dart across the yard like most search dogs do. But instead, Ranger lifted his head sharply and turned toward the house. He stared directly at the living room window. Then, with slow, deliberate steps, he approached it. He tapped his paw once against the glass. A soft, intentional tap. Ranger, what is it? The handler muttered, surprised by the odd behavior. Ranger tapped again, harder. Tap, tap, tap. The kind of tapping that wasn't random. It was signaling. Lisa stepped closer, heart pounding. Why is he doing that? What does he smell? Emily wasn't outside. She was in there. Ranger circled back, sniffing the foundation of the house, pacing with increasing urgency. Something about the ground, the air, the wood, something bothered him. He returned to the window and scratched the frame, whining low in his throat. Deputies exchanged uneasy looks. Dogs didn't lie. Dogs didn't imagine things. Dogs knew. And Ranger, he knew something was wrong inside the house. Let's go back in, one deputy said. All of us, we're rechecking every inch. Mark's voice shook. But we check again. The deputy interrupted gently. Dogs don't tap on windows for no reason. With trembling hands, Mark pushed the door open. Officers swept inside, flashlights bright in every corner. The entire house seemed to hold its breath. The living room rug was still slightly indented where Emily had been sitting, her crayons untouched, her coloring book half filled with rainbows. Nothing was out of place. Yet Ranger's persistent scratching, that low growl building in his chest. He was trying to tell them something. Something inside the house wasn't right, and none of them were prepared for what he would lead them to next. Deputies moved through the Coleman home with slow, deliberate steps, their flashlights slicing across walls, carpets, and corners where dust still clung. Even though they'd already searched once, everything felt different now, charged, heavy, as if the house itself were holding its breath. Ranger entered behind them, nose low, shoulders tight, tracking the air as if the scent he followed was drifting, hiding. His tail didn't wag. It didn't even flick. Instead, it hung stiff behind him, his body locked in work mode, focused and unrelenting. "Follow him," Ranger's handler said quietly. "He's telling us something's here." Lisa hovered behind them, arms wrapped around herself, shaking uncontrollably. She hadn't stopped crying, not once, but now her tears had turned silent, trapped in her wide, terrified stare. Mark stayed glued to her side. His hands trembled every time a deputy brushed past him. Ranger padded straight to the living room rug where Emily had last been seen. He paused, sniffed, turned in a slow circle. Then he pressed his nose to the floor, inhaling deeply. His entire body tensed. "Something's wrong," the handler said. "Wrong?" Lisa whispered, voice barely there. "What do you mean wrong?" Ranger nudged Emily's coloring book with his snout. It flipped slightly, revealing a lightly crinkled page beneath. The crayons lay undisturbed. Everything looked exactly as it should, but the dog whined a low, unsettled sound that made the back of every neck in the room prickle. "Lift the book," a deputy said. Mark reached down with shaking fingers and lifted it. A cold burst of air brushed his hand, so cold it made him jerk backward as if shocked. "Did you feel that?" Mark asked, voice cracking. There's draft coming from somewhere." One deputy knelt down, pressing his palm against the floorboards. "There's airflow, slight, but real." Lisa clasped her hands together so tightly her knuckles turned white. We checked everything. Where could air even be coming from?" "Under the floor," the deputy said quietly. He motioned for his partner. Together, they removed the vent cover from the wall just inches from where Emily had been sitting. Nothing but darkness. The kind of darkness that felt deeper than it should. Mark leaned forward. Is there's something inside?" The deputy shined a flashlight inside the duct. "Nothing at first. Then, hold on," he murmured. "What's that?" He angled the light further. The beam landed on faint lines, then uneven grooves in the dust. "Drag marks, tiny ones." Lisa gasped, stumbling backward. No, tell me that's not." The deputy swallowed hard. "These are fresh, not old. Something or someone was pulled." Ranger growled softly, ears flat, muscles coiled tight. "Someone was in your house," the deputy said quietly. Lisa's breath broke in a sob, hands trembling violently. Mark felt his stomach drop like a stone, dread twisting in his chest so hard he could barely breathe. Ranger suddenly yanked backward and sprinted toward the back door, claws skittering on the hardwood. He jumped onto it, scratching hard enough to rattle the hinges. "He's found a trail," the handler said. "We follow him now." Officers rushed out the door. Flashlights cut across the yard as Ranger bolted into the night, nose glued to the ground. He moved fast, too fast for his handler to keep up without jogging. He veered left toward the old oak tree, then right toward the small storage shed the family rarely touched. The padlock hung open. "Mark," Lisa whispered, unable to breathe, "you said you locked that." "I did," he said, voice hollow. "I always lock it." The deputies flung the shed door wide. Empty, completely empty, except Ranger pawed at something on the dusty floor, a small, pink shoelace, Emily's. Lisa screamed, collapsing into Mark's chest. He caught her, but barely. His legs felt like they might give out at any moment. Ranger barked sharply once, twice, then bolted behind the shed, dragging officers in his wake. Floodlights from patrol cars illuminated the path, as more deputies joined, running across the grass, yelling instructions. The bloodhound stopped at the creek's edge. He sniffed, growled. Then he looked up confused, frustrated. "The scent stops here." His handler muttered, "It's been cut off." "Cut off how?" Mark asked, desperation cracking every word. Before the handler could answer, a deputy shouted from the hill, "We've got tire tracks." Everyone froze. Lisa clutched Mark's hand so tight it hurt. The tire marks weren't familiar, not from anyone they knew, not from any car that belonged near their property. And they were fresh, very fresh. Ranger barked again, this time with an intensity that made every deputy whip around. He was staring at the woods, as if something or someone was still out there, watching them, Waiting. The night around the Coleman property suddenly felt colder. Like the danger hadn't left. It had only just begun. The forest felt alive, restless, whispering, shifting with the cold Tennessee wind as officers swept their flashlights along the muddy hill. Above the creek, the tire tracks carved into the earth curved sharply. The mud still wet and glistening under the beam of the lights. Fresh, one deputy said, crouching to examine them. Very fresh. Within the last hour, Mark felt a jolt of nausea. Emily had vanished just over an hour ago. Are you telling me? He whispered, voice breaking. That someone drove onto my land. We don't know that yet, the deputy said gently, though his eyes told a different story. A harsher story. One that made Mark's blood run cold. Ranger sniffed furiously around the tracks, pacing in a frantic zigzag pattern. At the edge of the road, he lifted his head, nostrils flaring, and let out a mournful howl. Lisa clung to Mark's arm, trembling so violently he had to hold her upright. Why would someone take her? She whispered, staring into the dark woods as if they might swallow her whole. What do they want with our baby? But there was no answer. Only Ranger's howl echoing across the creek. Then he took off again. This time, faster. The handler shouted and sprinted after him, shouting to deputies to keep up. Ranger crossed the gravel road, claws scraping, muscles locked with purpose. He wove between bushes, followed the tire ruts, then climbed a small incline toward something concealed by shadows. The old storage shed, not the small one near the house. The other one, the one at the edge of the property line, half sunk into the ground, its roof sagging, its door eaten by rust. A place the family rarely went. A place most people would never notice if they didn't know the land well. Stop, a deputy called out, raising his hand. No one goes inside until we clear it. A ranger didn't wait. He lunged at the door, barking with desperate urgency. The deputies approached cautiously, weapons drawn. They yanked the rusted door open. It swung inward with a loud crack. Dust spiraled into the air. The smell inside was damp mold, old rope, decaying wood. Flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing shelves stacked with unused scraps, paint cans, a broken ladder, and back corner. One deputy shouted. Everyone leaned in. It was small, barely noticeable. A thin scrap of fabric tangled in a nail. Pink. Lisa gasped. That's part of Emily's shirt. She wore that 2 nights ago. How did it get here? But no one could answer. Not yet. Ranger whined, sniffed the ground, then jerked toward the back of the shed where the wall had rotted open into a gaping hole. The trail led out the shed and into the woods. The handler blew a sharp whistle. Let's move. Officers fanned out, sweeping deeper into the forest. The wind rustled leaves overhead, scattering moonlight across the ground. Every step felt heavier, the darkness closing in. Ranger led them to a narrow footpath, one so faint and overgrown it looked unused for years. But the dog followed it with certainty. His tail stayed stiff, his body tense, his nose pressed to the earth. The parents followed, their breaths sharp in their chests. Please, Lisa whispered, eyes on the trail ahead. Please let us find her. Ranger suddenly veered off the path and sprinted toward something glinting under a pile of leaves. The handler knelt and brushed them aside. A small flashlight. Emily's. The pink plastic casing was cracked, but the sticker she had placed on the side of Smiling Unicorn was still visible. Lisa broke at the sight, covering her mouth as sobs tore from her chest. She was here, Mark whispered. She was right here. Ranger barked again, sharp, urgent. Then he took off running. They broke through the trees and emerged onto a clearing where the land sloped down toward a familiar shape in the moonlight. The abandoned mill, tall, silent, looming like a forgotten giant. Why here? A deputy muttered. Why bring a child here? A sudden gust of wind rattled the broken windows of the mill, letting out a hollow, echoing moan. The structure looked older than time, its wooden frame warped, its metal roof rusted through. Ranger didn't hesitate. He sprinted straight toward the side entrance, barking loudly enough to make every deputy draw their weapon. Hold up, the handler shouted. We don't know what's inside. A ranger scratched at the door, whining frantically, his ears back, his entire body shaking with urgency. He's got something, the handler said, voice tight. Something big. A deputy pushed forward, grabbed the handle, and the rusted door creaked open with a long groan. The smell of coal dust and old wood flooded out. Ranger charged inside. Flashlights followed. The parents stepped into the darkness, hearts thundering. And then everyone froze, because lying in the middle of the mill's floor, illuminated by a single beam of light, was something that made Lisa's scream tear through the night. Emily's little juice box, half finished, still cold. She had been here moments ago, but where she was now, no one knew. The abandoned mill loomed above them, its broken windows like hollow eyes watching. Ranger's paws scraped the wooden floor as he circled, sniffing the shadows with an intensity that made every officer tense. Emily's juice box lay on the cold floor, untouched. Yet it was a haunting reminder she had been here, not long ago, and now she was gone. Mark grabbed Lisa's hand tightly, the cold creeping into his bones. How did she get out? Where is she? His voice trembled, but there was no answer. Only the echo of Ranger's low growl reverberating off the walls. Officers swept the building with methodical precision. Every corner, every alcove, every shaft of darkness was illuminated by flashlight beams. But the room was empty. Too empty. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Ranger's tail stiffened. He bolted toward the rear of the mill and pawed at the door with ferocity. "Don't let him go outside," the handler shouted, but Ranger had already disappeared into the darkness beyond. Outside, the night had grown colder. Fog began to rise from the creek, twisting around trees like ghostly fingers. The bloodhound's paws left fleeting prints in the damp earth as he barreled ahead, the officers following on a cautious run. Then a deputy's flashlight caught movement. A vehicle, he called, voice sharp, down by the dirt road. It was a white utility van, parked partially hidden by tall weeds. Its paint was streaked with mud. Ranger froze, ears pricked. "Look at that," the deputy muttered, crouching to examine the tracks leading to it. These matched the tire tracks near the Coleman house. Mark's stomach dropped. He recognized the type of vehicle immediately. A van like that had been seen in the neighborhood before, in the past week. A utility worker had been knocking doors, checking electrical lines, and Mark had let him in. He had assumed it was legitimate, assumed no one would lie about that kind of thing. Now the truth hit him like a punch to the gut. Lisa's lips trembled. He was here all along? The handler knelt next to Ranger. "He's been here, and he's leaving now." But Ranger can smell Emily. He's on her trail again. The dog darted toward the van, nose practically glued to the tires. Mark and Lisa sprinted after him, hearts thundering, lungs burning, fear choking every step. Every shadow felt alive. Every crackling leaf sounded like a footstep. Ranger veered off the dirt road into the woods again, the officers following closely. The trail narrowed, winding between trees and over roots slick with moisture. The air was thick with tension. Every rustle, every snap of a branch, felt like a warning. And then, one neighbor's voice cut through the night. "I think I saw something," she called from her porch, wrapped in a blanket. She pointed toward the road. "A man, white van, driving off earlier. But I thought it was nothing. Thought it was delivery." Her face turned pale. I didn't know. Mark clenched his fists. It was him. That was him. Ranger's nose led them straight to the edge of the property, where the van had disappeared behind the tree line. Fresh tire marks cut into the soft earth. The vehicle had been here recently. Then Ranger froze. His entire body stiffened. He sniffed the air, then let out a long, bone-chilling howl. The officers shined their flashlights where Ranger was looking, and then it became terrifyingly clear. The dog wasn't just tracking a location. He was tracking someone moving, alive, nearby. The darkness of the night seemed to press in on everyone, the forest growing unnaturally quiet except for Ranger's low growl. Every officer's hand went to their weapon. Lisa's knees nearly buckled beneath her. "He's right there," the handler said, voice barely above a whisper. "He knows where she is, and so does the man." Ranger bolted down a narrow path, weaving between trees and underbrush. Officers sprinted after him, flashlights cutting erratic swaths through the fog. Every step was charged with tension, fear, and hope that Ranger would lead them to Emily. Fear of what awaited them at the end. Suddenly, Ranger stopped, ears back, body trembling, nose pointed directly at an old tree with a hollow base. And there, just for a fraction of a second, they saw it, the shadow of a figure, tall, moving too fast, retreating into the underbrush. "He's still here," the deputy said. "He's watching us." Lisa covered her mouth. "Oh God, he's still here." Ranger barked fiercely, charging forward as if every ounce of him screamed to protect the girl he had already smelled. The man had been careful, cunning, moving without being seen, but Ranger had found him. And now, The bloodhound was going to show them where the trail led next. Mark looked at Lisa, panic etched across his face. We're going after him. We have to. He has our daughter. Ranger barked again, urgency sharp as a knife. The officer whispered into his radio. He's heading toward the mill. The old mill. Everyone, move. The parents froze. The abandoned mill loomed in the distance like a dark sentinel, silent and ominous under the moonlight. Ranger took off toward it, paws skidding in the mud. Officers followed. Lisa grabbed Mark's arm, heart hammering. I just want her back, please. The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it a warning none of them could ignore. Emily's ordeal was far from over, and somewhere, just beyond the reach of the lights, the man who had taken her was watching, waiting, smiling. The old mill towered in the moonlight, its silhouette jagged against the dark Tennessee sky. Broken windows gaped like hollow eyes, rusted metal groaning faintly in the night wind. Ranger charged ahead, paws scrabbling across the uneven boards at the mill's side entrance, barking sharply as if warning them all of imminent danger. The officer sprinted behind him, flashlights bobbing like stars in a storm. Mark's chest heaved with every breath. This is it, he whispered to Lisa. This is where She has to be here. Lisa's tears streamed freely, her fingers clinging to Mark's arm like life itself depended on it. Please, Ranger, bring her back, please, she begged, voice cracking. Her cries were swallowed by the wind, the forest, the sheer magnitude of fear that had descended on them. Inside, the air was heavy, stale, and musty, scented with dust, rot, and something metallic faintly clinging to the corners. Every beam of their flashlights revealed a new layer of decay-peeling paint, broken machinery, splintered wooden crates. Ranger's low growl echoed through the cavernous interior as he darted between shadows, nose pressed to the floor, muscles taut and trembling with focus. Then the dog stopped. His ears twitched, his hackles raised. His barking changed to frantic, almost human-like urgency that made the hair on every officer's neck rise. Over here, one deputy shouted, shining a light toward the back of the mill. There, illuminated under a single flashlight beam, lay a small blanket, tossed carelessly across the dusty floor. A juice box sat beside it, half crushed. Ranger pawed at it, whining. She's been here, Mark whispered, his hands trembling. She's been here. But there was no child. The room was empty, too empty. Ranger's attention snapped upward. Every officer turned their lights to the rafters, where shadows twisted and shifted. A faint scuffling echoed across the wooden beams. Up there, an officer yelled, pointing. A figure scrambled above them, a tall man, face obscured by the darkness, moving with a desperate agility that made hearts pound. Ranger barked furiously, teeth bared. The man froze, then leapt from the beam of light, landing hard on the mill floor. Officers shouted, guns raised, and the man bolted toward a back exit, feet pounding across the old planks. Stop him! Someone screamed, but Ranger was faster. With a single bound, the dog intercepted the man, lunging and clamping onto his pant leg with unbelievable strength. The man yelped, staggering, but Ranger held firm, growling through clenched jaws. Deputies swarmed, tackling him to the ground. Where is she? Lisa screamed tore through the night as she ran forward, desperate to see her daughter. The man laughed, a chilling, shaky sound. You're too late, he hissed, his eyes wild and frantic. She's already gone. Ranger snarled, teeth glinting in the flashlight, refusing to release his hold. The officers restrained him, pulling him away as the man was handcuffed. You're lying, Mark shouted, chest heaving. Where is she? The man's lips curled into a sinister smirk. She's where no one will think to look, he muttered, voice low and venomous. Where you'd never imagine. Lisa froze. Where? She whispered, her body shaking so violently she could barely stand. Ranger barked again loud, insistent, urgent. He pulled toward the exit, turning his gaze toward the direction of the Coleman property. Tail stiff, muscles taut. He knows where she is, the handler said, swallowing hard. He doesn't, but Ranger does. He's taking us there. Mark felt a jolt of hope amidst the terror. He's leading us home? He asked, disbelief mixed with a surge of adrenaline. Yes, the handler said. He knows exactly where she is. That dog has found her scent. She's somewhere near home. The parents exchanged a glance, a mix of relief and terror. The thought that Emily could be so close yet trapped made their hearts ache. Ranger bolted out of the mill, racing through the foggy night toward the Coleman property, barking like a warning signal to the dark. Officers followed, lights bobbing across the uneven terrain. Lisa stumbled to keep up, Mark supporting her, both hearts hammering with fear and hope. The wind carried rangers barking, the echo bouncing off trees and the distant creak. Every sound, the crunch of leaves, the snap of twigs made them flinch, afraid it might be Emily's captor waiting to strike again. Then rangers stopped at the edge of the property, just where the living room window of the Coleman home glimmered under the moonlight. He scratched at it with his paw, then tapped it with deliberate insistence. Lisa's voice broke. "He's back. He's trying to tell us something." The handler knelt beside Ranger. "This is where it starts. He's tracking her scent inside. Somewhere. She's hidden. He knows where." Mark's eyes went wide as realization hit. The basement. The crawl space. Somewhere in the house. She never left. She was in hiding. Ranger let out one final bark, full of urgency, and turned toward the basement door, paws scraping against the porch boards as if urging them to follow. Lisa clutched Mark's arm so tight it hurt. Oh God, please. Don't let anything happen to her." The officers readied themselves, weapons and flashlights in hand, as Ranger lunged toward the basement door again, signaling with desperate insistence. Every nerve in the family's body screamed Emily was close, alive, and every second mattered. But even as they approached the door, a chilling thought settled over Mark and Lisa. Whoever had taken her had been inside their home before, and they knew the house better than anyone. Could they still be here? Ranger's growl deepened, echoing through the darkened hallway, warning that the danger wasn't over and that the moment of truth was right behind the next door. The basement door loomed before them, dark and foreboding, as Ranger pawed at it with relentless urgency. His low growl vibrated through the hallway, a warning that danger and hope were inches apart. Officers surrounded the door, weapons drawn, flashlights slicing through the shadows, while Mark and Lisa held their breath, their hearts hammering like war drums. "Move," the handler ordered, yanking the door open with a forceful shove. The hinges creaked, echoing through the silent house. Ranger bolted inside, ears pinned back, nose pressed to the floor, growling and sniffing in unison. Every officer followed cautiously, boots scraping across the wooden boards. The basement was a maze of old storage boxes, forgotten furniture, and dusty shelves. Faint moonlight filtered through small, high windows, casting long, eerie shadows across the walls. Ranger darted between boxes, whining, pawing at the floor near the back wall. His urgency was palpable. Something was here, something that could lead them to Emily. Mark whispered to Lisa, voice trembling. "She's here. I can feel it." He didn't take her far. Lisa nodded, tears streaming down her face. Ranger knows. He knows where she is. Then Ranger froze. Tail stiff, body coiled. His hackles rose. Every muscle in his body screamed danger. His nose pointed straight up. A faint sound creaking above them made every officer halt in their tracks. Up there, one deputy yelled, flashlight beam cutting across the ceiling. A figure moved with agility, skimming across the wooden rafters, tall, thin, and impossibly quick. The man's face was partially obscured by shadows, but his eyes glinted with desperation and cunning. "Gun, don't let him escape," shouted another deputy. The man leapt from the rafters, landing with a heavy thud on the basement floor. Dust and debris scattered in every direction. Ranger barked furiously, lunging at him, teeth bared, rolling low and threatening. The man tried to stumble backward, but Ranger's strength was overwhelming. The dog latched onto the man's pant leg, pulling him down with astonishing force. Officers swarmed, pulling the man into handcuffs. His laughter was low, chilling, almost triumphant. "You're too late," he hissed. She's already. You're lying." Mark shouted, rage and terror flooding his voice. "Where is she?" "She's where no one would ever look," the man continued, voice trembling but cruel. "Where you'd never think to search. Where no one would ever find her." Lisa sank to her knees, covering her face. Oh God, don't hurt her. Please, please." Ranger barked again, frantically tugging toward the basement exit, then circling, trying to communicate through every motion what the man refused to say. Emily was still nearby, and Ranger knew where. The handler adjusted the leash. "He's leading us somewhere," he said to the deputies, voice tight with urgency. "He's not following the man, he's following Emily's scent. She's close. She's somewhere, in or near the house." Mark's eyes widened in disbelief and hope. "She's here. She never left." "Yes," the handler said, voice firm. "He's tracking her. This is it. She's right under our noses, Ranger darted back to the hallway, barking sharply, then toward the main living area, pawing at the walls and sniffing frantically. Mark and Lisa followed closely, hearts in their throats. Every second felt eternal. Every shadow, a potential threat. Then Ranger stopped, his nose pressed against a wall in the corner of the living room, just a few feet from where Emily had been coloring earlier that evening. He scratched at it violently. Low, insistent growls rumbled from his chest. Lisa gasped. The wall, she whispered. The crawl space, the heater, that corner. Officers quickly assessed the area. Mark's hands shook as he pulled back an old water heater. Behind it, a wooden panel, new wood, freshly nailed, revealed itself. Ranger barked and pawed, nearly vibrating with urgency. A deputy pried at the panel. It came loose with a loud creak, revealing a small, dark hidden room. A stale, cold gust of air rushed out. Ranger bolted inside, barking, nudging at the corner with his snout. From the shadows, a tiny cough echoed. Lisa froze. Oh my God. Oh my God. She stumbled forward, barely able to breathe. Emily? Sweetheart? Mark called, voice trembling. The moment stretched, suspended in fear and hope. Ranger whimpered softly, tail wagging faintly, but still alert, as he backed away just enough to allow the officers to shine flashlights into the cramped, hidden space. And there, curled up on a thin mattress, small, shaking, but very much alive, Emily. Tears streamed down Lisa's face as she sank to her knees beside her daughter, pulling her into her arms. It's okay. It's okay. Mommy's here. Emily clung to her, whispering repeatedly, he said no one would ever find me. Ranger lay at their feet, chest heaving, eyes alert, ears twitching. The man in custody was led away, his smirk fading, knowing he had been outwitted by a dog and that the nightmare had ended. For now, Mark whispered, holding Emily close. You brought her home, Ranger. You brought her home. And as Emily shivered in her mother's embrace, a chill wind swept across the house, carrying a terrifying realization. The danger had been stopped tonight, but someone had been inside their home, someone who knew them, and they were closer than anyone could imagine. The night air outside the Coleman home was sharp and cold, carrying the scent of wet leaves and faint smoke from distant chimneys. Ranger's paws pounded the gravel as he raced ahead, barking urgently, leading officers back to the house. Mark and Lisa stumbled to keep up, adrenaline forcing them through aching legs and trembling limbs. Emily was alive, but every step toward home felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of terror. The porch lights flickered on as Ranger approached the living room window he had tapped earlier, pawing it with determined urgency. His barks echoed against the house, sharp and insistent, demanding attention. The dog's eyes, dark and knowing, held the answer that the parents needed but were too anxious to hear. Lisa grabbed Mark's arm, trembling. He's telling us. He knows where she is. She's still in the house, isn't she? Yes, Mark whispered, swallowing hard. He's leading us. He's been tracking her scent all this time. Officers quickly pried open the window, sliding it just wide enough for Ranger to slip inside. The dog bolted, circling through the living room and sniffing the floorboards with uncanny precision. Every movement was calculated, every pause deliberate. Ranger stopped at the corner near the old water heater, pawing and growling insistently. Here, the handler said, voice low. He zeroed in. Mark and Lisa's hearts hammered as they approached, peering down at the old, seemingly ordinary water heater. Ranger barked again, scratching at the wall behind it, his tail stiff, eyes fixed, refusing to look away. Mark's hand shook as he reached for the heater, moving it just enough to reveal a narrow wooden panel, a hidden door that no one had noticed before. The edges were fresh, nails still sharp, with smooth and unweathered. His stomach dropped. Someone had built this specifically for Emily. Someone had planned this long before tonight. Lisa swallowed, heart racing. Oh God, oh God. Deputies quickly pried at the panel. A stale, cold gust of air spilled out, carrying the unmistakable scent of a child. Ranger bolted inside, barking furiously, nudging the corner where the hidden space began. And there, curled up on a thin mattress, small, shaking, yet very much alive, Emily. Lisa dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she scooped her daughter into her arms. It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. Daddy's here. Her voice broke over and over, the relief crashing down like a tidal wave. Emily clung to her mother, whispering in a tremulous voice, He said no one would find me. Mark knelt beside them, hands trembling as he held both his wife and daughter. "You're safe now," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You're home. You're safe." Ranger stayed by Emily's side, tail wagging faintly, but alert, eyes scanning every corner. The dog had accomplished the impossible, bringing their daughter home alive. Mark bent down, brushing his hand across Ranger's head. "You brought her back, buddy. You saved her." But even as relief washed over the family, a cold unease settled in. Officers led the captured kidnapper away, his face twisted in frustration and defeat. He had been inside the Coleman home before, mapping and planning. He had created a space only a child could hide in and only a dog could find. Lisa hugged Emily tighter. "He knew everything about us, about the house," she whispered. "How could he get away with this? How long? How long had he been planning?" Ranger let out a low growl, ears twitching toward the darkened backyard. The parents followed his gaze and froze. Beyond the reach of the porch lights, shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally among the trees. The realization hit both Mark and Lisa like ice water. The man had been inside their lives. Before tonight, he had observed, prepared, and now he knew how to avoid capture. Officers began setting up a perimeter around the property, ensuring no one could approach unnoticed. Flashlights swept across the yard, rifles at the ready, but Ranger stayed beside Emily, chest heaving, eyes alert. He refused to leave her side, growling softly at every movement outside. Mark knelt beside the dog, whispering, "You've done more than we could ever repay you. You kept her alive when no one else could." Lisa turned to Emily, brushing her hair back, voice still trembling. "We're going to be okay. I promise, baby. We're going to be okay." Emily clung to her parents, exhausted but safe. Ranger nuzzled her gently, his body still tense, as if warning that danger wasn't entirely gone. And then Emily whispered something that made both parents shiver. A whisper that cut through the relief like a knife. He said, "He lives closer than we think." Mark's eyes widened, staring into the dark woods beyond their yard. The fear returned, sharper than before. Whoever had taken their daughter had been cunning, patient, and close. Too close. Ranger growled softly, ears swiveling toward the tree line, as if sensing the lingering threat. The family was safe for the moment. Emily was alive, but the nightmare had left its mark, and somewhere in the shadows of the night, the threat still lingered closer than anyone dared imagine. The Coleman house was finally quiet, though the kind of quiet that pressed against the ears and rattled the soul. Ranger lay at Emily's feet, chest heaving, ears twitching at the slightest sound. Officers had set up a secure perimeter, flashlights scanning every shadowed corner. Mark and Lisa sat on the living room floor, holding Emily between them, her small body trembling, but alive and breathing. For the first time since she had vanished, a fragile sense of relief washed over them. But even amidst the tears and embraces, a heavy, unspoken weight lingered in the air. Ranger had brought Emily home, but the family's lives had been irrevocably altered. Lisa stroked Emily's hair, voice trembling. "You're safe. You're home. Everything's going to be okay." But she knew, deep down, the nightmare wasn't truly over. Someone had been inside their home. Someone had watched, waited, and plotted. Mark's hands trembled as he cradled his daughter. He was too clever, too close. He might come back. "We have to be ready." "Always ready," Ranger growled softly, rising to his feet. He padded to the window, nose pressed against the glass, ears alert. The dog had sensed the lingering presence, the subtle traces of fear and intent left behind by the man who had dared enter their home. The officers began documenting the hidden room, taking photos, dusting for fingerprints. Detective Harlan, the lead investigator, approached Mark and Lisa. His expression was solemn. "We've got him in custody for now," he said, "but we know he had detailed knowledge of your home. He likely studied it for weeks. Whoever did this isn't just dangerous, they're organized. He's not working alone, and we need to be cautious." The fact that Ranger found her, he likely saved her life. Lisa's hands shook as she gripped Emily's tiny ones. "Saved her life. Thank God. Thank God for Ranger," she whispered. Emily's soft voice echoed in the room. "Ranger never left me. He was with me the whole time." Mark hugged both his daughter and wife tightly. "He never did. He's our hero, our angel," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Ranger leaned against Mark, chest heaving, eyes scanning the darkness, a silent guardian. Outside, the night had deepened, the fog curling around trees and across the lawn. But even as the Coleman family embraced, a subtle unease remained. The man who had abducted Emily had been meticulous. His calm, Cunning nature left an impression that would haunt them long after the immediate danger passed. Detective Harlan spoke again, voice low but firm. We'll keep patrols around your property. Cameras, sensors, everything.